Benvenuti a tutti. It is Joe here at Drinks Coach once more. It's a Friday, which means we're doing a special. Of course, do contact me, Drinks Coach UK, if you want to ask any questions about things to do with alcohol, or Vine Sack if it's a more important and quieter discussion you wish to have with me. Also, all the information about these wines is in the pull down below, in the bio underneath this. So if you're watching on a telly, look on a phone, look on a tablet, look on a computer. All the information is there. It's there for you. And everyone has access to one of those, right, these days? I think I've mentioned a few times this week on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter that I wanted to have a little bit of a nose through this new range of wines from Marks and Spencer's. Aren't they pretty? I think it looks great. Maybe I'm old. Maybe white labels with black writing on is considered extremely conservative and we should be moving away from that. But at the same time, there's a real sense of whole with these things. And they do exactly what they say on the tin. That's why they picked these 5. So what have we got here? Well, we have a Pinot Grigio. These are all basic food groups of the alcoholic. Pinot Grigio. We have Touraine Sauvignon Blanc. We have Barossa Chardonnay from America. We have Beaujolais-Villages from the southeast of France. And we also have Bordeaux Claret from the southwest of France. Interestingly, if you're working with Van de Bordeaux, they don't like you using the word claret, but Marks and Spencer's have just gone in there and gone, it's claret, which actually has certain connotations, which I think it fulfills rather well. So I've got a bunch of different glasses down here for different types of wine, so I'm just going to pick one at random. It's a bit wet. Pinot Grigio. What does Pinot Grigio do? Why do people buy Pinot Grigio? Well, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine, Nick de McMahon, if you're watching, used to be a young buyer at Asda back in Day, when you could buy a bottle of Pinot Grigio for about £2.70, £2.80, something. And he went into the store, as you are required to do. This was pre-Walmart. And he used to go to stores and have to spend time in there, like I did at Waitrose. I had to spend 3 weeks in store before I was allowed to work in the buying department. So you've got a feel for how you interact with the customers, what the Waitrose offer is, whatever. And so you're much better suited when you're sitting behind a desk of imagining where the wines are sold and in what environment and so forth. And he was down there, and this woman came in, I think 3 days in a row, and bought 6 bottles of Pinot Grigio, which, by the way, was the first wine that Nick had blended for Asda. Asda Pinot Grigio, one of the best-selling wines in the store. They sold literally millions of bottles a year. And he was watching her each day, and she used to come in, buy 6 bottles and go to the checkout. And then on the 3rd day, decided to follow up to the checkout to ask her why she bought this wine. She was like, what am I doing? She took out a mace and said, I've not stolen anything. So no, I just want to ask you something. And I want to ask you, why have you bought, because I've seen you bought 6 bottles of this every day for the last few days. Why have you bought this particular wine? I'm not an alcoholic. And said, no, I'm not saying you're an alcoholic. I don't drink it on myself. I have a bigger family. And it turned out this woman was Italian. She had a daughter and a son who brought their partners back for lunch every day. Very traditional Italian sort of like construct. Had a husband, had mum that's still alive. And they used to have these big lunches every day. And she said, the reason why I buy this wine is because it tastes absolutely nothing. It was her answer. Now, there is a point to this, and that is that some Pinot Grigio, especially cheap Pinot Grigio, sort of is supposed to taste of nothing. There are people out there that like drinking wine, but don't like really fruity things, or really tannic, or dry, or sour things. And if you're looking for something which is just effortless drinking, which has the merest sort of notion of maybe tasting a little bit like green apple or something, then it has its purpose. It makes it both very versatile. It goes with everything, so it doesn't clash with anything. But also an everyday quaffable wine, maybe a wine you want to use in spritzers, maybe a wine you want to use in your cooking, maybe a wine you want to use in other things. It's an incredibly versatile drink if done properly. And it's kind of a byproduct of the fact that bad Pinot Grigio was cropped in very high volumes, i.e. they made the vines produce too many grapes. So you're producing 15 tonnes per acre of vines, which is pretty extreme. But I think certainly in Germany and Italy, they got up to yields like that in some cases in the 70s and 80s. The wine came in at 10% alcohol because there wasn't enough sugar, there wasn't enough energy in the vineyard to produce grapes which were any riper than that. And you'd end up with a wine which tasted of zero, of anything green, unripe and sour. But once you got that balance right, and if you're looking at the modern times, you've got Pinot Grigios that cost £15 to £25, premium Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris, same variety, which are proper fine wines with all sorts of complexity and texture and richness and age-worthiness. But then you've got still this huge vacuum to fill of people who just want a glass of white wine and they don't want to fuss about it. You know, if you're the kind of person that complains every time you get in a lift because you don't like the music, then you're a bit too highly strung, frankly. You're too uptight, just let it go. And this is kind of like the lift music of wine, Pinot Grigio, so you don't expect a great deal from it. This is £7. I'm just looking at my list here. £7, M&S Classics number 4. I did a piece on Pinot Gris a while back. If you look through the previous shows, I think it's around sort of like 15 or 16 maybe. But if you just put it in a search, you will see one on Pinot Grigio. And this is the wine that I wanted to have on that show but didn't have, which was the supermarket offer. Very, very nice. Because most Pinot Grigio at £7, utter shit, right? But this one, and even when you look at the colour, you don't expect it to have any colour in it. It's got a very pale green, not really straw colour, almost a silver colour. But what surprised me when I drank this wine was it's got real character. It's got some flavour. Not so much that it would put off the person that likes wine that doesn't taste of anything, but it's got concentration. It tastes nice. Really nice. It's like an Italian muscadet. Be beautiful with seafood. Oysters, bada bing. I've got this like lingering taste which reminds me of Rose's lime cordial. There's lovely liminess to it. There's a sharpness of the waxy apple skins from a Granny Smith's apple. If you think that and think about eating the skin, that slightly tart malic but ripe and zingy at the same time, that's what this wine's like. £7, and from a region where a huge amount of overproduction takes place, and the wines are generally kind of too expensive for what they are. And this is the reason why when you go into supermarkets, Pinot Grigios are starting to diminish and they're trying to find other varieties. Pecorino, Chieti, all sorts of different ones around Italy, which could do the job just as well, but don't have the same cachet. Anyway, £7. Very good start, okay? That wine's fine. It's all the wine you need, ever, probably. Moving on. This is a Sauvignon Touraine. I think there's an extra squid. First one was £7. Yes, this is made by somebody who's actually very, very well respected in the Touraine Valley, which is if you've got France and you've got sort of like the centre spot in the centre of France, and you draw a line from there like an hour hand on a clock at 9 o'clock, straight out to the Atlantic. That's the sort of like the bottom half of the Loire, and that long region is basically Touraine. The area around Tours, which is the capital of the region. So, this is a 2019 Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon de Touraine has, for a long time, been the kind of the bin for stuff that wasn't good enough to be Sancerre or Puy-Fumé or Montluçon. But it is actually a very good region in its own right and has some very good vineyards and good soils. Within the area of Touraine, there are actually very highly prized dessert wine and dry white regions, and indeed red wine regions. Saumur-Champagny, Savinière, one of the great Chenin Blancs of France, Vouvray, they go on. Bonnezeau, Carte de Chaume, these are dessert wine regions, but they tend to be Chenin Blancs, those wines, in the Touraine that get real kind of props. But this is a Sauvignon Blanc. Now, I did actually visit, at the end of last year, I did visit the Central Loire, which is right in the centre. So, in fact, the Loire River goes out at 9 o'clock, like an hour hand at 9 o'clock. But before that, it starts a bit below, in the Auvergne, in the mountains, and kind of goes north, then hits this huge amount of granite, and that diverts the river all the way out to the Atlantic. And I discovered that 2019 actually it's not a typical vintage for Sauvignon Blanc in France, because it's very, very warm. I think if you remember it, we had a very, very hot summer. A little bit erratic in some cases, because it wasn't short of the odd rain here and there as well. But 2018 was really, really hot and people weren't expecting it. 2017, 16, these were lovely vintages by and large. 16 was a particularly special one, where when you're buying wine from the Loire, particularly white wine and Sauvignon, you want it to be zingy and fresh and not too hot and not too suntanned and kind of grassy and gooseberry-ish and maybe elderflower, florals, maybe even a kiss of asparagus in the wine. That's kind of what we expect but as the greenhouse effect has kind of taken its toll, we're getting more consistently riper vintages, and the wines actually taste much more like Bordeaux used to 10, 20 years ago, which is just the way of things, I suppose. And 2018 in Sancerre, I found quite hard work. There are obviously some one or two nice wines, but they weren't typical Sancerre. If I want Sancerre, I don't want the wine to taste like a white Bordeaux, and in 2018 they kind of did. 2019, which was almost as hot, maybe was as hot, but it was managed better. Maybe they were just ready for it. But 2019 has some lovely ripe fruit wines. So if you're drinking wine young, you're drinking wine from slightly lesser sites where they're not maximising ripeness already, so the wines in that hot weather got ripeness naturally. You end up with some really delicious wines. And I find this wine to be substantial, fruity, stylish, and a real class act for £8. There's not many Sauvignon Blancs in the world you can buy for £8 anymore, is there? I mean, anywhere. Slovenian Sauvignon Blanc costs £8. So, if you go into the region which is most famous for it, outside New Zealand, of course, then I think you're doing very well at £8. That wine always smells lovely. It does smell exactly like gooseberries. It's a classic ripe gooseberry-ish wine. It's not hot, although it does feel like it's got a fair bit of alcohol. 13%. A wine at this level you wouldn't expect to be more than 12.5 normally. It's unctuous, it's round, it's complete. That and a nice Touraine goat's cheese or a little crottin de Chavignon from the Central Loire. Lovely fresh goat's cheese with these grassy flavours. Delicious. Fantastic. Whack it on the grill. Bob's your uncle. Okay, let's go on to the last white. Okay, I'm going to use a bigger glass this time. Et voila. This is a Barossa Chardonnay. One of the wine buyers from Marks and Spencer's, wine buyers / winemakers, Belinda Kleinig, is Australian, and I think she is from South Australia, in fact. And she's responsible for putting this together. So if she doesn't know how to do it, then no one does. So let's have a look. I did taste a few of these, and these do stand out as the ones that I really would happily spend my own money on, especially these ridiculous prices. So, okay, so we've gone up another £1. This is £9. If you think about how bad the exchange rate is, how in the toilet the pound sterling is, and how well Australia and New Zealand, I didn't mean New Zealand, but generally Australia and New Zealand managed to cope with the credit crunch last time round, £9 doesn't buy you very much in Australia at the moment. You see, there's some elegance there. I mean, the first thing I smelt was ripe fruit. There's a telltale sort of smell of banana milkshake, maybe banana esters in the wine. It's young. It's been influenced by some oak. I don't imagine it's been in oak barrels. Nobody can afford to make a wine like this at £9 if it's been in oak barrels that cost hundreds and hundreds of pounds. But it may have had some staves in it just to give it some flavour, or some chips. That's perfectly acceptable and ecologically really the only way to go at this price. I can taste limestone. I can taste a dry, slaty, limey undertow to the wine. But it's generous and Australian, but not in a kind of over-the-top garish way. It's not bright yellow. It's not 15% alcohol. It's 13%. Hurrah. Do you remember the wines that we used to drink all the time? Canunga Hill, Lindeman's Bin 65, which was a truly magnificent wine for many, many years until it kind of dissolved into the background. This is like Lindeman's Bin 65 for £9. And considering Lindeman's Bin 65 was £5 20 years ago, this is actually, if you compare it like for like, probably even cheaper than those wines of those days. So yeah, it's fantastic to see an old friend and a style of wine which you don't see very much anymore come back. But it's not big and oily, it's not big and pineapple-y, it's generous and it tastes of quince and melon, and I just want some shrimps on the barbie, basically. Fantastic. That really put a smile on my face. Okay, right. 2 reds. There are other reds in the lineup. I'm not here to slag off the ones I didn't like, but there are a few that I really didn't like. Let you decide. I'll tell you the ones I liked, then I'm not going to be criticised for somebody saying, well, I thought that was rather good. No, I'm just going with the ones that being positive about this. These ones are really great. Beaujolais-Villages. You will probably become more and more obvious to everyone watching this channel as the year open brackets, close brackets progress, that I quite like Beaujolais. And in fact, I like Beaujolais enough that I've signed a contract with Beaujolais because of COVID. Things didn't happen, but to become some form of ambassador to help promote it in restaurants, because I think it's the great unsung hero of lunchtime reds. So I am invested in giving Beaujolais a good time, which is not why I chose this wine. It's just because I like it. All right, fair enough. Yeah. Okay, so Beaujolais-Villages, 2019. Very, very young, very fresh, very juicy. I'm not saying this is the head of Mensa or that it can cure cancer. At this price, which is £8, so £1 cheaper than the Barossa Chardonnay. What do you expect from that? Well, what would I expect from it? Well, Beaujolais comes in different forms. The Beaujolais that everyone still talks about for some reason, although we basically haven't really been messing around with that crap for a long time, is Beaujolais Nouveau, which is a wine which is made very, very early after harvest, so everyone at the harvest festival got something to drink. It can be perfectly nice, but it's a complete waste of good grapes, frankly. Then you've got Beaujolais, basic Beaujolais, and basic Beaujolais can sometimes be quite delicious. I mean, basic Beaujolais means it's not in a particularly special area. It might be in a vineyard that's planted on one side of a creek and not the other, so it can't be called something better. But if it's a 60-year-old vine and it's Gamay, which is always made from, it can produce greatness. And you can find old vine Beaujolais Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée, bog standard, £10, £13, which rocks your socks off. Then, of course, there's Beaujolais-Villages above that, which is wine which comes from areas which have been mapped out around specific villages famous for making Beaujolais. And then on top of that, there are actually names of villages, ones that stick out like Lantigné, where it's called Beaujolais-Villages Lantigné or Beaujolais-Lantigné, which is just now slightly better than the other villages, so it's given its own props. And then above that, there's 10 crus. Brouilly, Morgon, Cherouble, Chenin, Fleury, Beaujolais. I'm not going to go on because I'll probably miss one out because I'm doing a film, and that's what happens. And that wouldn't make me look like a very good ambassador, would it? But there are 10 of them, and they're all fantastic. So, here we are, Beaujolais-Villages. £8, did I say? Yeah, £8. That needs to go in the fridge. Needs a pint glass. Bit of, that cheap pâté de campagne, like supermarket French pâté, and a warm baguette. Just born for this. This is juicy, succulent. It's got a slightly iron, rusty taste, which is a good thing, by the way. It feels like it's from the soil. It has a granite, schistous, energized quality about it. Almost a volcanic taste to the wine underneath. But it's super ripe and super juicy. Best wine in the world with bangers. If you like a sausage sandwich for lunch or something like that, this is great. But there you go. I mean, this is everyday drinking at its finest, pretty much. Juicy, fruity. Tutti frutti. 13.5% alcohol. So far, the strongest, and in fact in the lineup, the strongest wine here. Who would have thought that the Beaujolais-Villages would be the highest in alcohol? There you go. Well, coming on to the last one. This is a humdinger. Oh, that's a pretty ghastly glass. Let's try that. Okay, we use this glass. It's a tasting glass anyway. M&S Classics, number 34. You heard this first, or possibly second. My dear, dear friend Victoria Moore from The Telegraph, I think, has already raved about this wine. Fair enough, she tasted it first. But she's right, as she most often is. A fantastic palate on the lady. This is Maison Sichel. The Sichel family have been selling Bordeaux in the UK since Bordeaux was important, really. They have a Chateau Margaux, which has always been revered and has been a real darling chateau in the UK, called Chateau d'Angloudet, where it doesn't make sort of like a sort of namby-pamby Margaux. It makes a Margaux that has enormous power and staying power and needs to be sort of 10 years old before you approach it. It's amazing with the steak. I mean, it's just the perfect Claret steak, really. Charles Sichel, main man of the Sichels at the moment. That's one of my wife's hairs. This is a classic Claret. Claret comes from the French word claret, which means rosé. Claret means pale one. But that's because back in the day, certainly to Henry VIII, when we were already drinking tons of wine from this region, all wine was rosé. We didn't know that if you left the grape skins in for a long time, it would have tannin, which would help the wine age. That's all new stuff. That's new shit that happened around Napoleon time. Before that, basically all red wine was pale, and it was called Claret, which is where the name Claret comes from. Fact is, if you buy a Claret, it actually means it's clarity, which means it's firm and it's got spice. This wine is made from the three great varieties of the Medoc, or of Bordeaux in general: Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. There is no oak here. If you add oak to this wine, it goes from a laughable £7. Yes, I did say that. £7 up to about £11, and all you get is a bit of an edging off or warming off the edges, and sometimes you don't see the lovely expression of fruit. What's amazing about these guys, they are S for Sichel, is how they've produced a wine that tastes so clarity and so complete and so tasty for £7. It's mad. It's mad. This is one of the best value wines I've tasted all year, and we're halfway through it now. I imagine I won't see many more, and this will be I'll be buying buckets of this at Christmas. Okay, so this is number 34, Marks and Spencer's Classic Claret from the Sichel family. Oh, spilling it everywhere. It just smells of claret. I could put this in one of those really, really fancy glasses, you know, the big ones. Have I got one? No, I don't want it. But you could put this in a posh glass and give it to someone and say, how much do you think this is? And you'd be very happy to pay £7 for a small glass of this. And it's £7 a bottle. It's got a nice bit of sappiness to it. Sort of sucks back, like elderberries. It's got sort of a fragrance which comes from the Cabernet Franc, which is all kind of dried herbs and ting. The Cabernet Sauvignon, there's just a lovely, light, pick fresh off a tree, so it's a really zingy blackcurrant quality about it. And underneath all of that is Merlot, which is the big supporting double thickness mattress of softness and sponginess, and just makes the whole wine supple and juicy. So there you are. Next time in Marks and Spencer's, you can see this new lineup. A lot of these wines were there already. They're just putting them under the same kind of umbrella, so it's easier to shop. The Pinot Grigio for £7. There isn't a better Pinot Grigio in the supermarket market right now, and I've tried them all. Sainsbury's Taste Difference is usually that good, but not this year. Touraine. This is... If you can't afford Sancerre, don't worry, just buy this. It tastes like really good ripe Sancerre. It's, if anything, if you like white Bordeaux and you can't afford good white Bordeaux, for £8, that's pretty amazing. Australian Chardonnay like we remember it, the good old days. Canunga Hill by any other name. Perfectly delicious. The Beaujolais-Villages, I know it's not really even wine. It's more like a soft drink, that one. And then the Claret. I can't believe this wine for £7. Cheesy Weapons. That was 21 minutes of pure joy for Marks and Spencer's. Well done, guys. Well done, all girls. Sue, Hazel in the press office, Belinda, and all you girls out there. Fantastic work. Really, really good.